So I request Shri R. Srinivas ji, Shri Rajnath Ram, Prashant Banerjee, Mr. Joshua, Mr. Harjeet Singh, and Mr. Vikram Gulati to please come near the dais so that we can start the next session.
May I request you to please assemble? We are beginning the session now. The first session on state and central transport models and policies for low carbon emissions. May I please request you to please settle down, take your seats. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. May I please request you to take your coffee and tea and settle down. Everybody to settle down. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We are starting the session 1 of this conclave. Of course, it's, as I said, on state and central transport models and policies for low carbon emissions. As you're all aware, in the introductory section in the morning, the emphasis on energy security was really there. It need not be overemphasized. We're all aware that, we are an energy deficit country importing fossil fuels, and that cannot go on any further. Of course, associated with that is carbon emissions. Carbon emissions basically come from energy that's below the ground and gets released into the atmosphere. It's a big issue with regard to climate change, has huge implications with regard to the economic and livelihood well-being going forward, as is associated with climate change and many other adverse impacts it can have. Transportation sector, of course, is one of the largest consumers of energy, predominantly run on fossil fuels traditionally. And therefore, it's important that, the lead be taken by transportation sector. We're already seeing globally a shift towards carbon neutrality, not only from a tailpipe perspective, but on a life cycle perspective. We're seeing the fact that, WP29 UNEC talk about bringing in some sort of regulation, voluntary though, on a LCA basis, life cycle assessment basis, for measuring carbon. We are already witnessing many countries similarly placed to India, like Brazil, etc., talking about a clear roadmap, shifting from tailpipe carbon emissions to well-to-wheel to life cycle. What it means really is that you have to look at the carbon issue not only from a point of view of the vehicle itself, but both as the impact from the energy that goes into the vehicle, that's well-to-wheel, and on a life cycle in terms of the entire from cradle to grave, which means manufacturing, recycling, etc. So that is the broad context that we'll be dealing with today. And to begin the entire session, I'd like to request and call upon Shri R. Srinivas ji from the Institute of Urban Transport to kindly make his presentation.
Thank you, Vikram sir, and thanks to IFGE for giving me the opportunity to make the presentation. Since the time is limited, I have been told to finish the entire presentation in 5 minutes. It's too difficult. I'll try my best to finish. If you are aware of, most of you are aware of the urbanization we had by 2011, 7,933 cities and towns. And since the census is underway, I think by next year we will be getting the provisional figures. The biggest question is how many total number of cities and towns. Perhaps it will be 10,000 plus. And you can see that now we are number one nation in terms of total population. It was 37.71 crore in 2011, which is likely to increase. Now presently, as per the projected, it is around 53 crores. And say by 2051, the UN estimates is that we will be having 80 crore. In absolute term, it will be 80 crore population in the urban areas. The cities and towns will be 10,000 plus. Now, of course, the biggest challenge is that the increase in the, the number of, motor vehicles, which has, increased from 114.95 million in 2009 to, 400 million in 2024, recording a compound annual growth of 10% plus over the past 10 years. Kindly see, the population is increasing, but at the same time, the number of vehicles. And the transport sector as a whole is one of the largest CO2 emissions globally, accounting for over 34% of the global CO2 emissions in the 2025. And this would be, the registration of vehicles and the, the most important contributor towards the, carbon emission is transport. Now, kindly see, the modal share, just see as of 2023-24, there were roughly 40 crore registered vehicles in India. Two-wheelers, dominated the landscape, and vehicular ownership is expanding. You kindly see the share of public transport. Please see, it has been on decline. I mean, this is a matter of concern. Of course, Government of India, the policy is that all the million plus cities should have the metro rails. But now you kindly see, especially the, share of public transport, it is actually, if you take India as a whole, it is on decline. And, the latest estimate, of course, is 2018, 25 to 35% is, share of the public transport. But yes, the silver lining within this is that the modal share in Delhi is now tilting towards, the public transport, especially the metro rail is taking the bulk of, commuting load. Now, of course, the public transport in terms of bus, I mean, the share is a little bit declining, which is actually, cause of concern. In 2027, modal share is in Delhi was 48.20%. in favor of bus, which has come down to 23.06%. But the reason is that we are having the shift of the bus commuters to the metro rail. Now you can see this illustration. Delhi is one of the highest 3.1 MMT. It actually emits the carbon. And you can see, I mean, state like Gujarat, Maharashtra, I mean, the more developed states, the more is the, the carbon emissions. And of course, energy requirements are also, increasing. Road transport consumes 92% of, India's transportation sector. And in fact, it has to be seen that how the dependence towards the fuel, fossil fuel, has to be, decline. And see, in the wake of global oil crisis, oil demand is being expected to double from 5 MBOE per day in 2021, 2022, 11.6 MBOE per day by 2045. There has to be, I mean, there will be tremendous increase in the demand of oil, but the biggest challenge will be how we can reduce the dependence on the fossil fuels. Now, of course, we do have, various policies which actually, advocate for the, modal share in favor of, public transport. NUTP, we had, Amrit. Now we are in the Amrit phase 2, smart cities. NUPF, National Urban Policy Framework, was also, which actually advocated for, the public transport. Then we also had the National Electric Mobility Mission Plan, which was launched in 2013, and also we had revision in 2020. And of course, we had FAME India, Metro Rail Policy, National TOD Policy, which actually presently I am involved in Transit Oriented Development Cell, which is actually advising the state government to go for Transit Oriented Development, which actually advocates for compact growth centers with the influence zone of 500 to 800 meters. And we also have National Clean Air Program, National Mission on Transformative Mobility and Battery Storage. Like this, there are a number of, in fact, Honorable Minister mentioned about the biofuels. We had, a policy on biofuels. Then production-linked incentive, Bharat Stage 6, corporate average fuel efficiency norms, ME Bus Seva scheme, and the National Biofuel Policy, which is the latest which aims for 20% ethanol blending in gasoline by 2025-26, encouraging the use of agriculture waste, which has already been in detail, Honorable Minister had mentioned. State level policies, various states have actually, made efforts, towards, work on the alternative fuels, reduction in the, the conventional fuel sources. One is demand subsidy, e-Amrit, Delhi, Maharashtra, Gujarat, Assam have actually incentives based on battery capacity, flat fees. Then road tax and registration exemptions, targeted infrastructure development, specific city models. In this regard, a lot of states have been actually, making efforts to, popularize the, e-vehicles. But NITI Aayog report says that at around 30% of the vehicles should be, e-vehicles by 2031. And in fact, I was in Town and Country Planning Organization where we had, formulated norms and standards for e-charging infrastructure. Now, that was, that was part of the model building guidelines and URDP guidelines. And now, lot of cities, they have actually gone for installing the e-charging infrastructure. This intentionally I have given the slide PC. My office is located in Anand Vihar metro station, and Anand Vihar is the most polluted area where you can see the AQI goes up to 400 plus, especially in the winters. December 27, 2024 it had AQI of 370. Then December 17 it was 461, which was classified as severe. Now this area has been developed as a multimodal integration. The multimodal integration means you can shift from one mode to other mode with an ease, and it should actually lead to reduction in the use of personalized vehicles. This is of course India has been the signatory where we are expecting that by 2070 we are going to get India's transport emissions to zero. Now let us see how by 2050 and 2047 we have the Viksit Bharat vision. But since Minister has already mentioned about use of alternative fuels, I hope by 2070 we will work proactively towards transport zero transport emissions. Now, of course, this everyone is here. Since time is limited, I will not really that. Yes, we need to make decarbonization efforts. Reduce our transport carbon footprint. Avoid short journeys, explore alternatives, avoid short distances by air, keep our personalized vehicle well tuned, or maximize the use of public transport, and also for short distance should use walk or cycle. Yes, this is also how cities can really adopt the electric buses, and how we can strengthen our e-charging infrastructure, and also how cities can kickstart the transition towards low carbon urban transport by rethinking land use and spatial planning. That's absolutely important, because cities do prepare their master plans, and cities are also making efforts for preparing comprehensive mobility plans. So that becomes very much important, that how we can really integrate land use and transport. Then only we are going to not only encourage our model share towards public transport, and we will also make efforts towards reduction of the carbon emissions. So now policy framework, of course we had some national urban transport policy, 2000, it was earlier it was in 2008, and then it was revised in 2014. Now the time has come that almost 10-12 years have gone. Now we need to revisit our NUTP policy, where we need to emphasize on the low carbon transportation, and of course decarbonization of urban transport, reducing the GHG emissions. And of course this would also require a lot of capacity building, sir, where the state government officials, whether they are working in urban development authorities, local bodies, transport department, how they can really work on the low carbon mobility plans. That will become very much important. So I think this has been at the international level, this has been very much recommended that We need to avoid or reduce the need for motorized travel. We need to shift to more efficient and less carbon intensive modes, and we need to improve efficiency, vehicle technology and fuels. So I think these have to be, all the state government, agencies need to work towards avoid shift, improve framework. Now, of course, MoHUA, since I have been also involved in IoT, where we are actually involved in appraising the detailed project reports for, metro rails, comprehensive mobility plan. So MoHUA has also launched its, e-bus seva, where the segment A is augmentation for city bus services and associated infrastructure under this segment, where 10,000 electric bus operation on PPP mode, bus depot and behind the meter power infrastructure has been facilitated. Section B is basically Green Urban Mobility Initiative. Under this segment, the scheme is supporting the implementation of green urban mobility initiatives for complementing bus services and demonstrating the reduction in greenhouse gas emissions in the urban areas. So thank you for, sir, I have tried to keep up the time.
Thank you so much. And really appreciate the fact that you've really tried to condense your presentation within the time limits. Again, thank you for a very insightful presentation. Now we'll be migrating to some now panel discussion where we have the benefit of stalwarts from, the various sectorals, I would say, crisscrossing from energy to planning to automotive. So as to get a 360-degree view of the thoughts in terms of addressing this session in a very, holistic manner. So I'll start my discussions with Dr. Rajnath Ram, NITI Aayog. Of course, as we are aware, NITI Aayog is the, a direction-setting think tank. And recently, we've seen there have been sectoral reports on Viksit Bharat and net zero scenarios. These have been, roadmaps which are pragmatic and offer a transition plan which seeks to address both upstream and downstream in a holistic manner, so as to address the issue of decarbonization. And also, given the context that we are in right now, where we are seeing extreme energy volatility from geopolitical scenario and vulnerability for the country, which is closely associated also with the issue of decarbonization. So, Mr. Ram, what I would really request you to share your thoughts on is, what do you think would be the role of biofuels in achieving the 10 objectives of a Viksit Bharat and a Bharat that achieves the goal of net zero? Over to you.
Thank you. Am I audible? Thank you, Gulati ji. The recent report that we have launched, it encompasses the all different kind of policy measures. It's a scenario exercise that we have carried out, and the report maps out what are different kind of model share is there, how there's going to expand in the future, because we have already taken an ambitious vision of becoming a developed nation by 2047. And with that vision, how our economy is going to expand, how our billion passenger kilometer, that's one of the parameter, per capita vis-a-vis the developed economies, if you are really aspiring to become developed nations, how that need to multiply in the future. Similarly, the freight component, freight part is also an important component, how that is going to change in the future. And then the model share of the different, currently in the passenger segment, it's largely around 78% is still is being compensated by the road sector, then followed by 17% railway, and the other sectors as well. 4% only contribute by the aviation, and very less, just less than 1% by the mass rapid transport system, metro. And almost similar kind of structure also exists in the freight segment. So going forward, if we really want to be a developed nation, our BTKM need to move from currently it is around 4,600. We need to go up to around 10,000 ton kilometer per capita. I mean, that's the kind of, it's almost 2 to 3 times. Similarly, the passenger segment, you have to multiply 2 to 3 times. And this modal shift and this multiplication of BPKM and BTKM will also require all different kind of shift, not only in the terms of the infrastructure and the kind of fuel that we are currently being utilizing, that needs to be also shifted towards more cleaner form. And biomass and biofuel will play a major role in this particular segment. Apart from the penetration of electric mobility, the biofuel has to play a major role. Currently, we are carrying out one study on because there are a lot of competing fuels which are all dependent on the biomass as a source. So whether such amount of biomass is available, because biomass has also different uses. So whether sufficient quantity of biomass is available to cater to the demand of the fuels, alternative fuels. So that a kind of exercise is going on. And in the morning we have heard Honorable Minister also. I mean, we have now grappling with this surplus food grains. So how that can be effectively be utilized more gainfully to achieve this decarbonization strategy. So these reports highlights all different kind of options, and I'm sure, I think that would be a guiding framework which will provide the industry and all the stakeholders to take this holistic journey.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'd now like to shift to a forum that India has created, along with other like-minded countries, the GBA, Global Biofuel Alliance, and we have the privilege of having Mr. Joshua with us. As we are all aware, Global Biofuel Alliance is a very impactful forum created by India, just on the lines of like International Solar Alliance, with the idea of getting like-minded countries who are working in biofuels to come together, build synergies, and for a future that's more indigenous in terms of its energy and is able to exploit the potential, huge potential that exists for biofuels. As we know, there are countries like Brazil and many others who have been much ahead of the curve in terms of this potential energy pathway. So what I would really like to understand from Mr. Joshua is if you can share your thoughts and views on how India can leapfrog biofuels, keeping in mind the what you see globally, particularly in countries like Brazil and all. Over to you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, India stands at a very unique energy crossroads where we actually do not need to follow the traditional slow burn evolution of legacy energy systems. Actually, to follow the moderator's question, if we truly have to leapfrog, we must actually shift the narrative. We can no longer view biofuels as just merely a supplementary blend mechanism or blending mechanism. I think the narrative needs to shift towards considering it more as an Indian national asset, an asset that not just transforms the energy sector or the transport sector domestically, but also internationally. And I'll come with reasons as I go forward. And I'm just taking, given the time constraints, I'm just taking 2 key pillars to establish what I just mentioned. The most significant leapfrog opportunity for India is the waste to wealth engine. I was heartened to hear the Honorable Minister mention that in his speech earlier today. That's because it lies at the intersection of climate action and also waste management. With the kind of population we heard from one of my earlier colleagues from the platform, the way India is growing, and the amount of consumers that you find in India, it also automatically transfers into the waste as well that goes into it. The Indian sector is still not fully regularized, or systematically it hasn't found itself the way the other sectors are in terms of its waste management and converting waste into energy. One of the key challenges is the sheer size of the Indian waste management mechanisms that we have. And putting in systems, international systems, does help in to regularize it. Starting with much smaller quantums would have samples with which we can go into larger towns and cities that we can do, establishing successes in smaller. I was talking to one of my colleagues the other day to see, with so much of waste, why couldn't we do it? And then one of those things he said was that the mayor of a city or a city commissioner comes in and brings in his ambitions or her ambitions. They put it in place, and within a year's time they get transferred. So all the ambitions of waste management go along with him or her. And the new patron or the new commissioner, it's up to them to take it forward or not. And it sometimes fails or it sometimes succeeds, often fails, because two different individuals think differently. I just gave a small example. And what happens here is aggressively pursuing 2G and 3G actually advances the biofuels and allow us to convert agricultural waste, especially if we have our food grain surplus that we're looking at, the urban agricultural residues and the urban waste, we are able to turn into high value energy and solve complex issues that we have in terms of biofuels that we're depending on. And the second pillar I would like to talk is how we could go about commanding the skies. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is a very fast growing area, the SAF, this Sustainable Aviation Fuel that we're talking about. And one of those key areas is this is a massive frontier. Aviation has become a massive frontier as countries come about putting in their policy mandates and their policies around 1%. Some countries looking at 2, looking at 4 going forward. There is some mismatch as well. So this is one of those things. The other day I was flying on an international airline of a flag carrier of a country, and the crew were proudly announcing that that aircraft was flying on sustainable aviation fuel. So when I got off on the ground, the first thing I did was to research what kind of manual the flag carrier, the country has. And there was no mandate at all for SAF or for biofuels. So everybody is looking at SAF with or without the mandate. But one of the key things we would need to emphasize if we're leapfrogging is being able to regularize the policy mandate and have frameworks that will then have the uptake. Why would someone invest in technology? Why would they invest in SAF, or for that matter in biofuel, unless there's a policy mandate that would create an uptake from the government themselves? So this is one of those things that we look at. I mean, when solar could sell at 18 rupees and today at 2 rupees, the policy mandate and the incentives that this sector got helped it leapfrog to that. But if we have to do that here in this sector, this is one of those things that we would have to really look at. And so that will help India then bypass the incremental automotive gains that we have achieved so far and position itself actually as a global bunkering geography. So if we could do this, and one other example I'd like to share with you is the GBA, the Global Biofuel Alliance, is in very active talks with the government of Netherlands and Singapore to work on a SAF corridor between airports, between, let's say, Amsterdam, Delhi, Amsterdam, Mumbai, Singapore, Delhi. So what it does is it not just promotes SAF, it promotes standardization and brings governments together, brings policy mandates together, and also helps defragment policy differences and standards as well. So I'll just leave it here. I could go on and on, but these are important 2 key pillars that I wanted to mention and leave.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And now I'd like to come to Mr. Srinivas. Thank you for your presentation. And one of the points that I could notice was the, not so good development of the fact that public transportation seems to be slightly going down. Maybe it's a reflection of the fact that, there is increasing urbanization. There is also increasing per capita income and therefore more mobility need of people. And given the fact that, we are going to see urbanization and the, per capita incomes increasing, therefore, this is something very important, not only from decarbonization, but also from, urban pollution point of view. How do we get the people of private vehicles and more used to use more public transportation? That's one. And the second question I would request you to address is, can we look at some better town planning so that it reduces the whole need of people moving around? So those are the two questions I would request if you can just throw some light on. Thank you.
The first, question which you asked about the, the use of, public transport, and you also mentioned the, the affordability factor, and if we are going to have 80 crore urban population by 2047, you can see that there will be a huge, there will be a huge increase in the, the middle class, typically the, the affordability factor. But yes, from urban planning principles, we have been working for the transit-oriented development. I think a lot of people are aware of that. And in fact, around 14 states, they have come up with the transit-oriented development policy, which actually, emphasizes on the, the intensive development along the, the transit corridor, and it also advocates, the station area development. It could be metro station or it could be even a conventional railway station. So through TOD, if you have a different uses, so the need for private, the private personalized vehicle will drastically reduce. But it depends that how cities will be able to implement the TOD plans. I have told you 14 states have come up with the policies, but it is an initial stage. The moment, say Mumbai, Delhi, Kolkata have got an increased ridership, through metro. But again, the challenges will also lie with respect to the, the tier 2 cities. Say, for example, Jaipur, Bhopal, Indore, where, metro, it will take time to increase the ridership. So, yes, if city goes for, TOD policies, it will facilitate the compact development of, cities, and it will also reduce the dependence on the personalized vehicle. But again, metro, of course, if you take the example of Delhi, it is most efficient. It is at par with any international, metro. So we expect the what Delhi is having the successful metro, how other cities can really, work towards the success of metro. This is the thing.
Thank you. We see TOD coming up in many cities now. Do you see?
Yes. In fact, in Institute of Urban Transport, we are developing a repository on transit-oriented development, and around 27 cities, have gone for metro. So they are in the various stages. Right now, the cities are actually making efforts towards preparing the plan. So it takes a lot of time. It is not that overnight you are going to have the TOD implementation. It requires a lot of it requires encouraging the mixed use regulations along the transit corridor. It requires affordable housing. That is the biggest challenge. Say for example, if I give recently a DDA housing scheme was launched in Karkaduma, which is also touted as multimodal integration as a part of transit oriented development. But the biggest challenge is that how we can ensure the affordable housing. The minimum price of dwelling unit is 1 crore plus. So I mean that will be a huge challenge for the implementing agencies to ensure affordable housing along the transit corridor.
Thank you so much. Now staying close to, like you mentioned, Delhi, and of course when you talk about Delhi NCR, there is, as we all aware, that there is always a going concern of pollution, and in this domain, CAQM has been doing stellar work in terms of trying to address this very challenging societal problem. And we've seen CAQM come out with a lot of cross-sectoral interventions and suggestions. Of course, as far as the automotive sector is concerned, it's been using the source apportionment studies, the emission levels from various vehicles. It's also pointed out the need for, looking at older vehicles. And sometime back, I remember perhaps around, what was it, May, CAQM also issued an advisory for all clean technologies to be, preferred by government agencies. And of course, subsequently, Supreme Court on 6th of January also kind of echoed this. So given the context, the challenges involved, I request Dr. Sharma to kindly share your thoughts on reducing pollution from the automotive sector moving ahead. Over to you, Dr. Saab.
Okay, thank you very much. And, I just wanted to, the specific mention of pollution, I think is important. I was reflecting back on the speech of the minister and the other dignitaries in the morning. I think it came up only 2 or 3 times. Why? I think number one, perhaps we think that decarbonization and climate change issues are more important, but for us, in most of our, and again, I'm not referring to Delhi NCR, most of our centers, urban, the emerging informal urban areas, the challenge is around pollution, and that's around air pollution. And I think sometimes we get so much fixated into a longer term climate trajectory and the issue of net zero that we forget that our immediate challenges in the next decade or so are still going to be around air pollution. And that's want to focus on the PM 2.5 as we are sitting here. Even today, in a good day that you are seeing, 170 is the amount of PM 2.5. Now, of course, the WHO standards are around 10 or 20. So when are we going to reach there? Which means that each one of us is actually inhaling this extra PM 2.5 particles, which of course, as doctors and surgeons are saying, directly impact our health, our lungs, and vital organs. And that's an important issue we need to focus on. Of course, what happens is when you look at the transport sector as a whole, let's say, from winter to summer, we would say ranging from about, let's say, 18% to about 30%. Transport sector alone would be contributing to that. Now, within transport sector, I think it's primarily the diesel and the petrol fuels that have been maximum studied. And of course, that's the vehicles that you see on the ground. So all the current, standards are around diesel and petrol. But of course, what we are also saying is that, emerging fuels, biofuels, ethanol, CNG, and other fuels need to come in. And each one of them comes with their added share of PM 2.5, PM 10. Of course, here in Delhi, NOx, NO2, ozone are the major problems. And we are seeing high levels of ozone even in the summers. So somewhere what is really happening is that apart from this contribution that we see from the transport sector or from municipal solid waste or from dust, road dust and CND, construction and demolition waste, or other biomass burning, we also have almost 25% coming out as secondary pollutants. And what is secondary pollutants? It's a combination of NOx, SOx that is coming from all these sources, and that's the one which is then leading to ozone, which is actually very damaging for us. So what I would suggest is that we need to look at the transport sector on a very specific basis, because of course it's not that I'm saying that transport sector is the real culprit. If you look at work is happening across the other sectors also. But within the transport sector, how do you ensure that the vehicles that are currently plying, and we have an estimate of about 63 lakh just plying in Delhi, BS 1, 2 and 3 vehicles. And if I take Delhi NCR, then I can just add another 60 to that. So more than these vehicles, one BS 1, 2, 3 vehicle would be polluting about 20 to 30 to 40 times of a BS 6 vehicle. Now, of course, that legacy fleet that we have is somewhere that we need to deal with. And a lot of our, you mentioned the directions and advisories. A lot of our advisories are around three-wheelers, what we can do with them in terms of moving beyond the diesel three-wheelers. Then our advisory and directions are on two-wheelers. Then specifically in Delhi, we are also looking at buses, transition from diesel and CNG. Now, of course, the important point here is that at one time, our major problem was PM10. And that's where the Supreme Court asked us to introduce CNG. And that's why a lot of the mixed vehicles came up, CNG and petrol together. But today, if you look at CNG, we still are having high NOx values from CNG. Even testing has been done for bioethanol vehicles and other vehicles. So it's important, no doubt we need to have an integrated approach to this, but it's important to ensure that as we are transiting into the cleaner vehicles, we are also looking beyond the conventional fuels, petrol and diesel, even moving beyond CNG. Ethanol could be an option that has already been mentioned, and of course EV, depending upon the grid change that is happening in India, becomes very important. So again, another reflection I want to bring from the morning is the mandates and the incentives on EV. And this is something that the Delhi government has just come out with. I think from a CAQM perspective, if you really want to deal with the traffic issues, the traffic pollution issues, we feel that much more needs to be done. Number one, just to summarize, I think first is the cleaner fuels. Second is emissions and enforcement. Currently, a lot of our PUC system, ATS doesn't even capture PM 2.5 and NOx and other pollutants. So there's a big gap there. So in terms of moving fleet transition, that we have again done in terms of ensuring that aggregators, fleet aggregators and are actually transiting into cleaner vehicles. And of course, I don't want to underestimate the role public transport, congestion, parking and other issues play into this. So it's a combination of factors, but please remember that our challenge for the next decade or so is still going to be around the air pollution parameters. Of course, climate change and net zero is important as a longer term goal, but GHGs are distinct from our PM 2.5, PM 10, which we really need to focus on. And that means Delhi NCR, to start with, will have to go through a stronger transition, stronger mandates and incentives so that we can move ahead beyond the conventional vehicles and look at the cleaner fuels and how we can support them. Thank you. I'll get back to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Virinder. I think you've covered it very holistically. You've addressed the issue squarely, talking about how it's distinct from decarbonization and how it's immediate and facing us. And of course, you've also recognized the various interventions that are required. Thank you so much. Now I'd come over to you, Mr. Banerjee, and of course you represent the Association for the Automobile Manufacturers. And in the morning, when we were discussing the whole issue of shift toward a cleaner and a greener mobility ahead, and the 2-3 things came out very strongly. One, of course, there is absolute no question about moving towards sustainable mobility. 2, about multiple clean technologies are needed. 3, that this will have to be done in India with Indian ecosystem. So now coming to the fact that, the automotive industry, like mentioned by the minister in the morning, that is the largest contributor to the economy, paying the highest amount of GST and also exports. There is a challenge as we transit in terms of creating the local ecosystem. How do you see the automotive industry taking up this challenge? And of course, this goes to auto component as well. And what would your views be in terms of what do we expect from the government? And of course, government has done quite a bit till now. So over to you.
Thank you and good afternoon, everyone. It's my profound privilege and honor to be here. I think rising India, aspiring India's first and foremost priority is economic growth. And automobile industry's growth is directly indicative of the nation's growth. And therefore, we must not forget that while the growth brings in its wake the challenge of emissions, challenge of energy security, challenge of decarbonization, GHG reduction, and of course the self-reliance in a current geopolitical uncertainties. So therefore, representing automobile industry in this forum, I have only 4 things to say, having heard from morning sessions till now different views. The first and foremost requirement is we must have a very clear, stable, consistent, without flip-flop direction, policy roadmap. And I'm very honored and very happy to see that Honorable Prime Minister has given us 2070 net zero target, notwithstanding what the world is talking about, because our national priority, our situation demand and dictates that 2070 is the right thing for us to do. And then there is a 2047 Viksit Bharat milestone. And prior to that, 2030 targets. So these are the milestones which are very clearly laid out. So our need is stable, clear approach, direction in which India needs to move. It's first thing. Now, India is a large country. We are growing. Our needs are very intense. Aspiration is very big. So therefore, we should be very clear, as Honorable Prime Minister also mentioned, that we must have a multi-path, multi-fuel, multi-energy solution, technology agnostic ways. So this first and foremost is very important. Let the 1,000 flower bloom. Let all the options be explored for India. Whether it's a CBG, whether it's a electric, whether it's a LNG, whether it is CNG, whether it is hydrogen fuel cell or hydrogen ice. Every options, as long as it's catering to the need, whether it's a rural needs, urban needs, local needs, individual region needs, we must welcome. We should not be hesitant to adopt all options. This is the first point. Second, prepondering considerations we must focus on is that it should be ensuring domestic assurance of supply chain, and the risk must be mitigated to the greater extent with externalities, because it has seen that the world order is any point in time changes with no remorse and no concessions. So therefore, we must be very self-reliant. Our domestic centricity, our domestic people own self-reliance needs to be focused. So Atmanirbhar Bharat and the farmers doubling of income. And then we are blessed. We are a blessed country because we have abundant sunshine. We have abundant water. We are placed in a manner that where perhaps the God is kind on us. So we must have a benefit of sunshine also, so solar energy, maybe hydro energy, maybe biomass energy. So we must utilize that. And then the third and important point which we should also think of, that having got the clear roadmap, having got the multiple technology agnostic solutions, having got domestic centricity and all, we must then start focusing on the center-state relations, because when we have to implement it, center-state relations must be managed in a manner that, because transport falls in a concurrent list, and that's where the majority of challenges comes. And the last point, which is also very important, as Honorable Minister mentioned about Gulati San's vehicle going in truck and then he is using. So ecosystem development which is relevant to a specific options. So for example, if you're talking about electric, if you're talking about two-wheeler electric, then it's a domestic connections charging. But if you truck, then you have to talk about high voltage, high power, power options of charging. So charging infrastructure for EV. When it comes to flex fuel, we are in intense discussion with OMCs, where all you will give the flex fuels, which ROs you will be giving, when will you give, how many stations you will give E85, how many stations you will give E20, E100. So those things should be very clear. So roadmap for biofuel, roadmap for electric, roadmap for LNG. We have been discussing LNG 500 stations, then we brought down to 150, then we brought down 50, then we are in 27. So that ecosystem development around us, we must focus. So these 4 things, if we prioritize, in my view, country is all set to take its legitimate positions in the global arena. Thank you.
No, I think very well covered and a very, very short time. I must compliment you. As in the morning, it was pointed out that it's not just about energy security. It's also about being able to have a future pathway which is also secure from the ecosystem, the supply chain, because that we've seen recently became a big issue with rare earth metals and rare earth magnets. India cannot be held hostage. Sorry to use a harsh term. So that is important, and the 4 points that you bring out are so critical in terms of trying to achieve that with indigenous capability. Now, I'll turn to Harjeet ji, and he, of course, brings the perspective from the largest contributor of vehicle manufacturing in the country, which is two-wheeler. And two-wheeler, in fact, we are the global leaders. There's no two ways about it. And it's a very proud, fact that, in most of the other areas, we are following global trends in terms of regulations. And two-wheelers is one where actually we are leading some of these. So now, coming to you, Harjeet ji, there has been talk about energy crisis and need to have energy sustainability and self-reliance, especially in wake of what's happened in the recent past one or 2 months. This issue has become further compounded by the fact that we have a strange situation. We are importing more and more fossil fuels, and we are at the moment sitting on surplus ethanol, which cannot be used. So there is a lot of talk about, can we do higher blends of E20, perhaps E25? Can we look at flex fuel vehicles? Now, I would like to bring your, wisdom and thoughts to this. What are the challenges to increasing the, base blend beyond, let's say, E20 to perhaps E22, 25, or whatever? And do you think, is that the way to go in terms of high ethanol utilization? Or do you think flex fuel is really the way to go?
Thank you, Mr. Gulati. First of all, two-wheeler also consumes around 2/3 of the gasoline. So we are the maximum gasoline user, and ethanol is blended with the gasoline. It's my very favorite caption that all stakeholders for using an ethanol are winner. I have not seen a single stakeholder. I would like to know if who's a loser. For example, government. Government gains, it's a green fuel. It reduces import bill, adds to the Atmanirbharta, reduces carbon footprint, so the GHG gases, and most importantly, increases farmer income. Today morning we heard Minister saying that the payment to the farmers were given only because it could be diverted to the ethanol. What about the customer? Customer is much less impacted by the international fuel and the forex fluctuation. And we have seen recently the way the oil prices have been going up and down, and people were guessing it might go up to $200, and it might go. What are the OEMs? OEMs get a advantage of a biogenic CO2 or a CAFE, and slightly a selfish interest that IC engine life is enhanced because of this thing. And environment stands to gain because it's a renewable resources. So I believe it's a one fuel which has 360-degree win-win, and that's the reason that we have gone too fast. And if you see starting from 2006, 5% ethanol, I will not go into details. In 2022 only, 4 years back, we were 10% pan-India. We started E20 in 2023, and by 2025, pan-India, it is E20. And just imagine if this 20% ethanol was not added in the gasoline, what would have been the condition today? Now, so Gulati, your question is beyond this, because there is a surplus ethanol. I believe there are two routes. One of the route we have already tried also, that is enhancing the base fuel, the base blending in the gasoline from 20 to 22 or 25. Let me tell you, today, development of any percentage of ethanol in automotive technology is not a big challenge. Talk about E30, 40, 50, monofuel, all can be done. In fact, we have done flex fuel, so monofuel is a much easier thing. I think what we did while going from E10 to E20, the baggage is the older vehicle which are in the market. There are around 25 crore two-wheelers which are there, which have fundamentally not been designed for E20. So for taking a call, we had gone through a very rigorous testing for 1.5 years, a joint testing between SIAM, ARAI and IOC. And we tested on material compatibility, we tested on performance, we tested on emission, and also the durability. So such an extensive testing when it has been done, and especially on the older model. When I say older model, means BS2, 3, 4, and also BS6, which were before 2023. Because in 2023, we had already made all the raw material compliant to E20, so there was not expected to fail, and those vehicles are already on fuel injection, so they could take some variation in the energy input. Based on that testing, I think we took a conscious call that we can go a base fuel for E20, and it has been, I think, one of the most successful story in India. Going beyond that, there are two routes. One is increase the base fuel, and second is go through a flex fuel vehicle where you can use up to E85. And thanks to Minister Mr. Gadkari, who pushed the auto industry, and auto industry rose to the occasion. That's the one project where there was no regulation, and we still developed that technology. Inside our management meeting, though there used to be always a question, where is the regulation? Why should we spend the money? We spend the money on that. Today it is coming as a handy. Now, if we want to increase the base fuel to 25 or 22, I think we'll have to go through the same cycle of what we have done for a E22. For a E20, we have to again do the retesting. We see what are the gaps and what are the challenges. And if there are failures, I don't think we have any good solution. So those are the challenges for the increasing the base fuel. But the second one, which is a flex fuel vehicle, which has already been developed by majority of the two-wheeler, one model have already been displayed, and we are mass production ready, which can use ethanol up to E85, has again all positive, all kind of flexibility. You have an excess fuel, you give 85, and if you do not have for some reason not an excess fuel, those vehicles can take E20 as well. So that's the biggest point is, provided there are two enablers, two main enablers. One is, we know that the energy content in the ethanol is around 2/3 of the gasoline. So for going to E85, when the fuel efficiency is going to be impacted, that customer is not going to accept, because that is going to impact his daily running. There will be no way we can sell him the idea unless until we follow the Brazil model, where there is a E100 33% price lower than, equivalent to the energy content, than E27, which is a base fuel in Brazil. So that's the one. Second, the vehicle cost also increases by around 5 to 8%. So we are also expecting if there could be some GST reduction, so that it just compensates for raw material cost increase. So with these two enablers, I think then we can devise an excellent package of a communication to the customer and he will be willing to accept. So I believe given a choice, second route is far more assuring. And by the time we do the testing with the E25, we'll take another 1.5 years. We would have gone far ahead had we gone through the flex fuel vehicle route. Thank you.
Thank you. That's very clear. Since you mentioned that two-wheelers account for 2/3 of the total gasoline usage, and of course there is a linked issue of other emissions as well. There has also been a lot of talk, especially around Delhi, looking at electrifying two-wheelers. It's perceived that two-wheeler segment is easier to electrify, but I don't know whether you would agree from the practicalities of it all. Do you have a view on that?
Okay, sure. As a hero, we support all kind of energy sources, and we are in a big way investing in the development of electric vehicle, and we are in the electric vehicle. But I think in whole discussion, I see one thing which is getting a slightly lower seat is what is customer's choice. What will customer buy? I think we need to keep the customer in the focus, then you will get many of the answers which will go right. Now today, 65% of the two-wheeler are motorcycle. Going to EV, there is no good solution available which is equivalent to ICE motorcycle, which has a much longer range, anything from 400 to 500 kilometer, much load-bearing capacity, and more fuel efficient. The price of the EV motorcycle is 2 to 4x than the ICE. So that itself becomes a non-starter, and it remains only in the niche market. That's why the two-wheeler scooter penetration in Delhi you see is 15% versus motorcycle penetration, which is just 0.5%. The 40% of the content are still import in the EV, and making it highly vulnerable to the geopolitical situation, and whereas ICE has 95% local. Despite around 5,000 plus crore investment done so far by the domestic battery giants, still lagging in terms of performance and safety standards. We all know HRE and LRE magnet story, primarily imported from China. We all recently faced the music, and which controls 95% of the production and the sintering capacity globally. China controls 95% of the anode and 85% of the cathode, and the cost of the localized cell remains vulnerable to Chinese export control and the price shift. Charging infrastructure still remains a challenge, and there are other options also available rather than going for an EV. I think hydrogen, recently we visited one research organization and we saw hydrogen has a very good potential both the ways, either as a hydrogen cell or even as mixing with the gasoline, because it has a 3 times the energy of the gasoline. So we believe that there will be a multi-energy options, and that is what we have been talking since morning. They will coexist depending on many of the factors. One is environmental, technology maturity, cost, and finally the customer acceptance for quite some time. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a mandate to finish this up by 2:15, and we are at 2:14 right now. So I would like to stick to the mandate. So I would not go for question and answers, and I think I would like to conclude. Let me just summarize what I think we've gathered. The topic, of course, was low carbon emissions. Carbon emissions are basically, when if you look at it, is basically from fossil fuels below the ground. And a common link to when you say carbon emissions increasing, you're basically saying fossil fuel consumption is going up. Fossil fuel consumption also leads to pollution. So although carbon emissions and pollutions are two different creatures, but they have the same mother. The same mother is fossil fuel. So clearly, I think that is one takeaway, that we have to move away from fossil fuels. How do you do that? Of course, we have a very good presentation, and clearly the first and the foremost path for us is to try to move towards public transportation, try to decrease the need for mobility itself in self-sustained communities, transport-oriented centers, creating that so as to increase efficiency. That's one way of doing it. It's absolutely essential since we are growing as an economy amongst the fastest large economies in terms of GDP growth and with a population that is aspiring and young. But also, I think two things came out very clear. We have to address the legacy vehicles which are there, which are going to be an issue of concern for next, let's say, 5 to 10 years. How do you address that? Primarily around scrappage is what I think. But going forward, clearly, the voice seems to be clean technologies, multiple clean energies, and that could be the solution, because even though bioethanols, if you use them, or CNG, if you use CNG, will have some emissions. But given the fact that we are now fast moving towards BS6 stage 2 RDE level and now WLTP next year, and the BS7 is expected very close by, the tailpipe emissions are actually becoming very close to negligible, even below negligible. And we'll have to also address things like, emissions from tires, emissions from, braking. So Europe is already addressing that, and there are reports which says that that is also one of the concern areas when we look at clean mobility. But clearly the message is we have to look at multiple clean energy formats. In India, we will need all the clean energy formats to going forward. The roadmap has to be clear for each one of these formats. Industry has to step up and localize, because that's the only way. We also heard the international perspective that when we look at ethanol and biofuels, we have to look at not only 1G, the first generation, look at 2G and 3G, the second generation and third generation, how we can bring that into commercial viability as fast as possible. Those are really going to be win-win solutions, because with 2G, you're solving the problem of parali burning, for example, in this neighborhood, and also using it as a fuel. So it's a huge multiplier effect. Same thing goes for 3G. And of course, very important point made in terms of looking at the surplus ethanol we have, which is, can we look at SAF? That's how do we do that? And of course, the voice coming from the point of view of increasing blending or going with flex fuel. Clearly, flex fuel is the way to go forward. It checks off all the boxes. So I think I've attempted to summarize the session in under a minute, and I think I'm just over by 3 minutes. Apologies for that. But we'll conclude with that. Thank you so much for your patient hearing, and I'm glad that we're all here today. Thank you.
Thank you, all of you, for the insightful talk. And just to honor everyone, I request Mr. Vikram Gulati to hand over the planter to Dr. Virinder Sharma. To Mr. Rajnath Ram. To Mr. Joshua. To Mr. R. Srinivas. To Mr. Prashant Banerjee.
I'll just come out.
Yes, much better. Take a better picture.
To Mr. Harjeet Singh. Thank you, everyone. We request you to kindly group photograph, please. $245. We request you to kindly join us for the lunch and request you to kindly come in the hall at 2:45 p.m. Thank you.